Broads Media.
There's so many problems. Not having Ben is a problem. Not having that $30 million is a problem. At times, Joel's a problem. He's my farthest thing from an issue because I know he's still an NBA superstar by the end of this. But there's times where you want a bit more from him, and it looks like he's going through the motions. But I think he's getting frustrated with games like this where you need guys to help out and step up. And outside of Seth Curry, there really wasn't anyone. I mentioned the top of the fourth quarter, but really, there's not enough. There's not. You're having issues consistently. Well, Danny Green starts, he goes 2 of 7. Well, Matisse Thybulle starts, and he goes minus 23 in a handful of minutes last night. So here we are, flip-flopping nonstop. Who do we start? It's an ever-going rotation that we don't really have. You know what happens when that's the case? Your team's not good enough. If you can't consistently put out a product that you can rely on and you have to change pieces left and right literally every single game, it tells you that your team is not good enough. And the answer isn't, look, we're all frustrated, but I still believe the answer isn't to just get rid of Ben just to get rid of him for random pieces, because then we get upset with those random pieces the same way we do Tobias, the same way we do Danny, the same way we do with other players. I think we all just naturally kind of use this frustration, whether we know it or not, or realize it or not, and we're just targeting all these pieces when in reality, it's a collective group. And the example I always use, which it might be tiresome to hear it, and it might be annoying to hear it, but it truly is the best way to describe where we're at. It's not this first one. I kind of have 2 here. This does seem a little like the year where they had Al Horford and Josh Richardson, where, they won some games and whatnot, but you knew it was just off. And right now, they're clearly not a finished product with the drama surfacing this organization, but it does seem that way, at least for right now, that this team is kind of a bit of a mess in that department where, sure, they won some games, but you knew deep down that there was something off with this team, and right now they're a 500 basketball team. I go back to, would they be above 500 a bit more if they didn't have the COVID protocol situation where they went 2-9 or something along those lines without a lot of their players? Maybe they're 4 games over 500, 3 games over 500. Regardless, though, there's clear signs of issues, no matter if that's the case or not. But the example I want to tie it to is when the Eagles went down the Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz era, and it became a disaster, there were some fans that blamed it all on Carson Wentz. There were others that said it's all Doug Peterson. There were others that said Howie Roseman. There's others that said the offensive line and the injuries. And reality is, it was poor drafting by Howie. Carson Wentz really sucked. Doug Peterson's play design was brutal. He did not run the football, which made the team very one-dimensional and easy to stop. Their best wide receivers were Greg Ward and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside with the 4-game spur to Travis Fulgham. And their offensive line was an absolute shambles, where it was a new lineup every single game and the most combinations we've ever seen. It was ridiculous. So why did the Eagles fall apart and collapse? There were 7, 8, 9 different reasons. Why are the Sixers looking the way that they are right now? It's not because Joel Embiid's not a closer and he's selfish. It's not because Doc Rivers is the dumbest head coach in the world. It's not because Tobias Harris is the worst NBA player in history. Now, they have, Tobias Harris is clearly brutally overpaid right now. My point is, it's not just one reason. It's not just one. Well, if you fix this one. Now, what I'm going to say is, I feel with that statement, there will be people who supported Ben and said, well, he was the culprit last year, and he was the reason why everybody freaked out and put all the blame on him. That's extremely unfair. With all of that said, with what I just stated, there is legitimacy still to, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but there's legitimacy. I can't believe I have to explain this, I should say, to a primary point guard in 2021 being afraid to shoot a basketball. Majority of the issues with Ben in the postseason, or majority of the issues with the Sixers in the postseason, stem from that right there. So that's still in play, and that still is fair to put a lot of the blame on him based off of last year's debacle and falling short. And just to be clear, one of the issues I have right now with Matisse Thybulle, who is a young, promising kid that I really enjoy watching as well because he's special on the defensive end, and I'm keeping it 100. he's problematic. He doesn't work. So it's not just a Ben thing. It's the style of play. I keep it the same no matter who it is. If it's another player that's getting shelled and annihilated on the offensive side, but he defends well, I'm saying, hey, if you find ways to trade him and package him up with Ben and this and that, he's movable. I'm in the same boat no matter who it is. Ben, Matisse. The difference is Ben has superstar talent potential labeled to him. Matisse Thybulle, not so much. So it brings it into a different tier. Matisse Thybulle was never brought into this organization to turn it around and be a number 2 behind Joel Embiid. He was a late draft pick in the 20s, which is a totally different circumstance. But just to be clear here, one of the issues with this team, and a solid portion of it here is, you don't have a lot of shooters. Here's another thing to throw into the mix. They don't have a real point guard. As much as I love Maxey, what do we love about him? He just flies around and he's speed and he's a burst of energy and he drives, right? And like, that's awesome. But he's not a primary point guard. That's not a knock on him. I just wonder long term, can you get away with being a number 1 starting point guard and your best option be just run around nonstop and see what happens, right? Like, there has to be a structured offense. You have to make passes to your best big man, and you got to get the ball into the post, and you got to run an offense, and you got to slow it down at times.